Our family life lesson for today is called Children, a Blessing from the Lord. Sometimes we may not always feel that way, I understand. There are times when we're like, God, why did you lay this heavy burden upon me? But no, children are good. I will say, I was talking to a young couple the other day. They have a 9-month-old child baby, right? And they were going out to dinner together by themselves for the first time in 9 months. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you're really into that baby. Their firstborn, you understand? You always like that with the first one, I think. Anyway, so they're asking about, I said, well, yeah, I've got grandkids, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I've heard that grandkids are better. I said, yeah, sometimes I think if you could pass over the kids part and just go right to grandkids, it would just be great, because having grandkids is just awesome. I don't know why. I mean, I'm still pretty, intense and disciplined and strict, with my grandkids, but it's just different. I think it's probably because I got older and wiser. I don't stress about some things as much as I used to. Maybe not. Psalm 127 verse 3 says, Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. It is an amazing thing how couples that maybe are childless at some point, maybe especially if they haven't had children for a while, how it becomes such an overriding passion to have a child. Us guys, we want to have that young son to carry on the name, like our name is something important, like, right? And just to have children and to nurture and the ladies, how they get all gushy about the babies and stuff like that. I like to wait till they're like 4-ish or something, and they can wrestle and you can throw them around and they don't break as easy. But children are cool. Just keeping it real. All relationships are important and all require certain responsibilities as well as affording certain privileges. Last week we talked about the role of husband and wife. And even as adults, we still maintain relationships with our parents, for better or for worse sometimes, right? They are in a different form. They're not telling us to clean our room and do our homework maybe. Maybe some of them do, I don't know, but mostly that's not happening. Most of us have brothers or sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and other extended family members, and many of us play the role of employer or employee, church leader, community volunteer, and on the list goes. We all have these positions that we have, right? One very special role most of us assume at some point in our lives is that of parent. And the parent-child bond is a unique one, evoking strong emotion unparalleled in other relationships. There is this different kind of connection with your children. It's just, even now, I go up to the base sometimes and I'll see my daughter, who I don't necessarily have the absolute best relationship with. We talk, we're not like fighting or anything, but she's way out there in left field somewhere and, and chafes at some of the things she learned growing up in church and all that stuff. But still, I look at her and go, that's my daughter. And there's this desire for our relationship to become something deeper and more than it is, right? As I remember when she was little and all those kind of things, right? It's kind of strange that way. We have all witnessed the tenacity of a mother's love, the fierce protectiveness of a father for his child's physical safety, and the stalwart refusal of parents to give up on the most wayward child. Huh? That's true. We don't quit. The parent-child relationship, when it is healthy and God-centered, probably gives us the clearest picture on earth of what unconditional love is like. Because quite often, that's just how we feel about our kids. They can be the most orneriest, awfulest, music's really bad English here, things on the earth, but somehow they're still our kid. And we're just like, no, I guess I'm just going to keep on plugging away. Somehow, by God's grace. Children are a blessing from the Lord. They are not a nuisance, inconvenience, or setback to our plans. Sometimes parents do act like that. They are precious, vital, and cherished treasures. I remember the movie, I think it was it Coco? Coco? Yeah. About how being remembered, the idea was that you were remembered, right? Who remembers you? Who remembers my dad? You guys don't. You never met him. But I do. he's somebody that I remember. Now, someday myself and my siblings will all drift off, and then the memory of my father, except on some piece of paper or a headstone if it's still there, will disappear, right? What matters is what we engage in life, how I speak into their lives, and how they change mine. If your children haven't changed your life, then you're really not engaging them, because they will. They challenge you to be something more than you were before they came around. As Christians, we must learn to view our children as God sees them, right? Ooh, that's a good one right there. That's a gold lesson right there. See our children as God sees them. What's inside of their life? What gifts? What abilities? What calling? And develop healthy ways of relating to them and training them to be that godly seed that brings honor to God. I can tell you as a grandparent, I'm already doing a far better job with my grandchild who lives with me than I probably did with my own children. I've just learned. And it's been amazing over the last few months. You guys, again, most of you know Shiloh. He's a very peculiar young man. He's made such great progress since he's been in our home, and I don't give myself all that. He does have a heart for God. And lately he's really been stepping into this, what does God want? Now, he doesn't always do what God wants. He'll tell me, yes, I know God wants me to do that. I'm like, so why aren't you? I just haven't made my mind up to do it yet. But he has that desire, and he's starting to think about, what does God want me to do in this situation? And that's really our job as parents, is to help them develop like that. I was telling that same young couple with the 9-month-old, like they were asking, of course, what's the one thing you would tell us, blah, blah, blah. I said, to understand that as your children grow, your relationship with them changes. When they're 15, they're not your 4-year-old. Your 4-year-old, go to bed, right? Take a bath, clean your room, whatever. And at 15, you're trying to get them to kind of make some decisions. And one thing that I would tell you from my own experience, and I'm going to tell you because of my mistakes, you kind of need to allow them to make some choices. You got to kind of figure out what God wants, where they might actually make a mistake. It's okay. You'd rather them learn those things while they're still in your house where you can help them than to, graduate from the house and go out there and make those mistakes and never learn, right? That was just a little extra there. Hope you like that. All right, Roman numeral 1. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience. He learned obedience. My wife and I are foster parents because we're technically fostering Shiloh until we get legal guardianship over him. And we were foster parents to his father and a couple of other kids as well. And we have to renew our credentials, so we're watching these classes on, child stuff. And sometimes when I'm listening to some of those things, I try to figure out, is there really something in there for me to learn? I'm not trying to be like stubborn or think that I'm always right kind of thing, or are they trying to promote something that's different? Do we need to consider our kids' feelings and listen to them and take input and evaluate? All those things are good, but sometimes we can get this lost thing where we're allowing them to kind of just be all that they want to be and not learn to be obedient, right? It is important to learn to submit to authority. Now, I don't mean like necessarily out of fear, or whatever. Like a lot of kids experience abuse today. I understand that. But at the same, they still need to learn to hear an authority figure and do what they say. Because sometimes there are authority figures that you get to choose in your life, like who you work for and this kind of thing. And sometimes you don't. You're a student in school and this is the class you're assigned to, and that's your teacher. Better deal with it and learn how to submit and be a working component. All right? So Jesus learned obedience. A very special relationship exists between a parent and a child. God the Father and His Son Jesus modeled the original parent-child relationship. Okay? And so we can learn something from observing this relationship. Jesus learned obedience and was thus made perfect. Okay? He can't, you know what? It was easy for Jesus to kind of be perfect in heaven kind of thing. But then when He came down to earth, He was challenged, you might say, in that earthly form. And He made decisions to be obedient and subject to certain things, just as we need to, right? He had no sin, but His will had to be tested in Gethsemane, right? So the goal of the parent-child relationship is this: to empower one and to prove the obedience of the will. I'm trying to remember exactly. I read this thing from Charles Dobson or Chuck Dobson. I don't remember how they call him anymore. Big thing in the kids thing ministry back in the day. It may still be, I don't know. but it was to break the will without destroying the spirit. In other words, bend their will to listen to authority without destroying who they are. Does that make sense? You want them, right? Can I just tell you, some parents, you do not know everything your child is capable of or will become in life. Sometimes you may find yourself a hindrance to what God is wanting to do in their life because it's not something that you think of, right? Shiloh wants to be a rapper. Now, a lot of kids want to be rappers. I understand that. But he practices it, picks up tunes, works on rhymes, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, if that's his dream, I believe he can minister through that. I believe he can. So I want to help him with that. I want to encourage that, right? I don't want to look at it as just some pipe dream type of thing, like we sometimes do with children, right? So we want to empower them, but at the same time, help them to become obedient, right? Does that mean that they can never express themselves? No, but they can express themselves with respect and honor, right? Shiloh right now is having a difficulty with his football team. He decided to go to youth camp. We had a discussion about this. I said, you can go to football practices or you can go to youth. I'm not making that decision for you. You ask God, you pray, you're a Christian, you ask God, I really want to go to camp. And I believe that God did speak to him at camp. He's like really reflective about stuff, you know. And again, he's got a lot of things to work through from his past. I get that, but he's really reflective. He's asking me questions, right? But the coach, I think, worships football and not God, as some do, and has been giving him grief. In addition, Pastor Donnie and I were talking about this at length before we got together. His coach, I don't know if all the coaches do, my wife has noticed that there's a lot of it on the sidelines. There's a lot of profanity out there. And so he's faced with this decision, what do I do? I want to be respectful to my coach, honor my coach. But it's hard. Can you imagine a Christian kid? Imagine your child, and again, some of your kids probably have had this happen, I don't know, going every day of the week for 2 hours to listen to more profanity than they probably heard their whole life. That's hard, right? But they have to learn to submit sometimes, or make a decision. Like he's making a decision. What do I do? What's the step I take? Do I have to step away? I said, you need to confront this, not in a disrespectful way, but you need to talk. You need to let them know your concerns. Sometimes they're just doing, some people do, I'm going to say some people, we sometimes do things we shouldn't do because we get lazy and we fall into a bad habit and then, I got to change that. And we get back on track and then we kind of float back into it. We do that a lot. Some people, the coach could be doing that himself. I don't know. I don't know him well enough to say one way or the other. So to empower and to prove. Let me get going. I'm taking too long there. Lessons of obedience are learned in the family. Right? How to obey, right? We don't want people kids just obey necessarily just because we said so. That's a common thing, right? Why do I have to do this? Because I said so! Kind of thing. Now, there's some truth that there's times when that has to be. But we develop a trust with our child that they know that we are trying to help them. Yes, they're going to be rebellious. They're going to express themselves. Sometimes we've got to correct that. I get that. They got to learn how to approach situations, how to voice their opinions or thoughts or whatever in respect, and then say, but whatever you decide, mom or dad, right? That's what they have to learn. That's what we got to teach them, okay? God said in Malachi 4:6 that the whole earth would be cursed unless parents and children come together, and we're seeing that today, right? One of the things we read a lot is about fatherless homes. Especially in the African American community, that's a big thing. At least one side says that. To where they said that back in the 60s, it was like 80% of African American families had mothers and fathers in them, and now it's down to like 25%. I mean, it's not just the father, but the enemy attacks the father more than anything else in those regards, right? Becoming baby dads and stuff like that. Satan has sowed wrong beliefs in our society. Child-centered families. Child-parent equality. The basic goodness of children. Are children basically good? No. They choose to do a lot of wrong things because they're very selfish, and we have to help them learn that. All right, so let's get back to the basics, the lessons of obedience. Parents are